Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are specifically going to talk about um, House of the Dragon and how the Targaryens control their dragons in context of bringing dragon riding to Dungeons and Dragons. All right, so spoilers for all of House of the Dragon in this, and for Game of Thrones. All right, here we go. All right, so as a dungeon master, why do you need to worry about this? Well, you definitely need to worry about this because you play Dungeons and Dragons, right? And the design team of Dungeons and Dragons forever has been afraid to allow player characters to ride dragons. I don't think that dungeon masters have that luxury anymore. We have to figure out a way for player characters to ride dragons. And the reason why is Dungeons and Dragons this week was very much surpassed by House of the Dragon. And so basically, Dungeons and Dragons defeats Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. It defeats House of the Dragon every single week. You can pretty easily deliver something that's far better than, like average Americans just watch fantasy, right? But the charismatic, the intelligent, the confident are building their own stories and far surpassing whatever's been put on screen. Except this week. This week, without exception, right? House of the Dragon surpassed Dungeons and Dragons. So basically, I had a game on Sunday night. People were there playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? If they had stayed home and watched House of the Dragon, they would have had a more powerful experience. Just this 1 week, it is inarguable. House of the Dragon delivered a more powerful experience for the artists. That's the showrunners, delivered up this, one size fits all story. And normally we can easily surpass this with Dungeons and Dragons. But the reality is, Game of Thrones did a huge amount of setup for this. House of the Dragons was like, hey, we're going to do a prequel, but it has to beat what is on screen. It has to beat Game of Thrones. And so that's pretty interesting. That is really interesting that it had to surpass Game of Thrones. It's really critical that they did that they pass Game of Thrones. And they did, right? So that means that the reality is that House of Dragons has been able to surpass Dungeons and Dragons, and that puts a pressure on every single dungeon master that riding a dragon is necessary for player characters, because they've seen this on the small screen, and it's a very legitimate and so anybody coming to Dungeons and Dragons at this point is going to be like, oh hey, I'm glad to be here at Dungeons and Dragons. When do I get my dragon? Right? And we're not going to be able to say you don't, and what we do sucks compared to House of the Dragon. It's a new day, right? So my apologies. At the beginning of this, I said that we were going to talk about how the Targaryens manage dragons. We're not going to do that. The entire point of this video is to say that Season 1, Episode 10 of House of the Dragon has put every single dungeon master on notice and this gets really wild. We are under the gun, all right, for just cultural pressure that we need to put our player characters on dragons in any given campaign, right? Because it's a very legitimate request from the player characters at this point. And here's the problem. The design team has given us nothing, right? There's that Dua Lipa meme where she just does a bad job of dancing, and then they show her doing she's just really kind of lazy because they cut out 10 seconds from one concert. Well, they've given us nothing on this. So dungeon masters are out on their own. We haven't been permissioned for this. We haven't been equipped for this, right? But the reality is the culture has caught up, and it demands at every single table that we deliver dragon riding, right? That's going to be tricky. That's going to be very tricky. And the reason why is, and actually, it's not just us that has this huge problem now. House of the Dragon ended with the first dragon battle, right? Every minute of the next season, it's going to cost hundreds of millions, if not, it's going to cost a fraction of $1 billion. The next season should logically cost $250 million, maybe $500 million. Also, how are you going to compete with Rings of Power, which is literally spent $1 billion? So the point of this video, and sorry I got it wrong in the beginning there, the point of this video is House of the Dragon has put immense pressure on every single dungeon master out there. And actually, so has Rings of Power. We as dungeon masters are in a different space now. We have different expectations on what we're expected to deliver for bog standard Americans who show up at our Dungeons and Dragons table. All that's my humble opinion. Oh, and I'm going to say, we're just starting to unlock everything we're going to need to do this, because usually we've been assisted by the D&D design team. Here we literally have bupkis. We're starting at zero. It's very problematic. It's very, very problematic. All that's my humble opinion. I'm eager to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.